Okay, I want to show you something real quick. I'm kind of excited about this. This is kind of cool. You recall, I wrote this book, Proving 32 AD, and it is solving the true date of the crucifixion. And in this book, it's a thin book. Let's see. What do I have here? Barely over 100 pages, so it's a booklet. And it's lowest possible price that Amazon will allow me to sell it for online. So anyway, Um, let me read the back of the book to you. I'll just read it to you real quick what it says, and that way you'll know what this is about if you're not really familiar with it. These aren't reading glasses; they're more for long distance, so you know that's why I have to take them off because they can mess me up, especially early in the morning, and it's still dark outside. It's dark 30 where I'm at right now, East Coast. So anyway, in 1582, Pope Gregory the 13th thought it'd be a good idea to correct the Julian calendar that was over time drifting backward in such a way that Easter had effectively slid back into winter. So Easter in February is kind of problematic. So part of this correction included a decision to remove 10 full days from the calendar in October 1582 and virtually pull, as you're looking back, virtually pull all dates forward in time. In that year, Monday, October 4th began as Monday. October 4th was on a Monday, and it got slid up into the next week on the calendar. It became Thursday. So you went from Monday to Friday next week. So we went from October 4th to October 15th in one day. Can you imagine? What if your birthday was in there? You're just kind of, everybody, let's just have our birthday on the 15th, I guess. 10 days removed from a calendar with 7-day weeks means that there's 3 days out of place when looking backward to when Jesus was crucified until now. Let me add this second paragraph here. And various fixes and adjustments are accounted for in various calendaring systems and calculators, yet historians, both amateur and professional, have remained confounded due to the synoptic gospel accounts and the ancient Hebrew traditions and calendaring rules not lining up with even the dates on the correct days of the week or the weekdays. So what I did is after years and years of research, I figured out why. I figured out what the problem was. And it's a 3-day shift in the calendar. Looking back, the dates weren't actually fixed. They weren't actually changed. For instance, the Jews in 1582 in January kept worshiping on the Sabbath 7 days apart, regardless of what they did with the calendar. And they kept worshiping the same every 7 days apart. So they're probably looking around at what's going on. What? Now, the problem didn't affect so much even the president. It was probably shocking, and I'm sure it made the news, and people were going, what are you guys doing? Are you crazy? What's the point of all this? I'm sure it was confounding to a lot of people. And it did not change the future as far as that goes. For instance, the Sabbath day, 7 days apart, it kept going regardless of what they. Now, here's an interesting thing that happened, though, is really, it's the look back. When you go back in time and you're in 1582 or you're today in 2026 and you're looking, and I'm going, well, first century, I want to see what day of the week the crucifixion was. Let me take a look and see. So you go back, and Sir Robert Anderson found out, Harold Honer found out, and so many dozens and dozens of people have found out that this is really kind of confounding, because what happens is that now we're in a Gregorian calendar, and we're looking back at a time that in written history was mostly the Julian calendar. What we didn't see was, for all these years, is that not the dates, they corrected the dates, and there's an algorithm mathematically that gets used in the calendaring systems that makes adjustments for the date, but it didn't really fix the mathematics. In other words, if you have a calendar that is made up of 7-day weeks and you remove 10 days, in a 2-week period, you've got 14 days. So you remove 10 days. You've got 3 days that are off. I don't care how you do the math. I don't care what kind of a plunger you want to use or what type of a sledgehammer you want to use. You're off 3 days. And it's the weekdays. It's not so much the dates. They move the dates. They kind of can fix and adjust for those, but it's the weekdays that are off. So I want to look for the crucifixion, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to be going like that says, oh, 32 AD is not going to work. That's Nisan 14, because I'm looking at the Hebrew calendar. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm looking at the NASA data. I'm trying to find out when was the full moon, because that would be Passover, Nisan 14 into Nisan 15, which the Hebrew calendar changes in the evening, sunset, right? And I'm going, there's the full moon there. So which year does that? And everything's jacked up. Well, I found where that change is, how it happened in 32 AD, and I found that the surrounding years, all of the surrounding years, do not work if you correct those 3 days. And I give the receipts in here. Now, by the receipts, I mean there's interesting things to find out how you calendar things and how you count the dates. And recently, they've discovered a little mini handheld stone calendar with pegs that's almost like, you're playing cribbage or something. There's little holes in it to count pegs and things. That helped, and they called it an administrative calendar. And it fits with what they thought was a prophetic calendar and how they figured things. So that's kind of cool. But administrative calendar was used by people like Joseph would have used something like that when he was helping in Egypt. Daniel would have been really familiar with this type of a thing. So in an administrative capacity, especially if you're under Babylonian captivity, it's what they used. And it's just for general rough calculations is what they did. So it's kind of cool. In this book, what I did is to, the idea occurred to me, okay, well, 1582, there's got to be something in writing somewhere about this, and that will show what they did and how they shifted things. And there are some, but there's no receipts per se. One interesting thing happened is that it was a pope who made these changes. And a lot of the countries around the world are not Catholic. And some of these countries, being more Protestant leaning, resented the popery and them trying to tell us what we're going to do with our calendar. No, we're not going to do it. So many other countries like the United States and Great Britain did not change their calendars and jump onto the Gregorian train until the 1700s. So to demonstrate that this kind of thing happened, I found, you can kind of see them on here. These are newspaper mastheads. Let me see, get this out of the way. I think that might be in the way. I'm not sure. I've got some glare from somewhere. Newspaper mastheads. They're the banners across the top of a newspaper. And where'd I find these? Dave, where'd you find these? Well, I found them on eBay, because you can buy a lot of things on eBay. You can auction and get old newspapers on eBay. So there weren't a lot of newspapers being written and being dated across the banner mastheads in the 1500s that we could access. I don't know what's available out there, but I couldn't find anything. But if you look at the United States, other places in Europe, and you look at Great Britain, they're really fond of printing newspapers on a regular basis. And here's a cool thing I did. As I went on eBay and I purchased one myself on auction. See, if you will look, you will see, all right, that this was very common with the newspapers, is they covered a range of dates. they would do, for half a week and then the other half of the week. So they didn't have a daily newspaper necessarily all the time. So here's the London Gazette, and it says from Monday, October 1st to Thursday, October 5th in 1685. Now, so I'm sorry, that probably did some weird things with your eyes. The print's kind of weird, but that's kind of cool because this is one of the receipts that I was just showing you to talk about. Because if you look at some of the pages, the Shepherd's page is one of them. There's a bunch of them out there where you can go on the Gregorian calendar and you can do a little look back thing and you can look at calendar stats and play with the dates and things like that. See that glare? It's just really awful, awful. I'm sorry about that, people. Some of you are going to be much better at that than I am. Okay, let me get this squared up. So just looking at the date for October 1st, 1685, notice it's a Monday. It's not Monday, rather. It's a Thursday. On the newspaper, it was Monday, right? But looking at the Julian calendar, it was Thursday. So this shows a 3-day drift. So in 32 AD, which was supposed to be Nisan 14, and this can't be the year that Jesus was crucified, it wasn't Monday. So looking through the lens, the proper lens, the Julian lens, the Gregorian calendar, adjusting the calendar and how we look at those dates for the crucifixion year of Jesus Christ, it was on Thursday. And this shows that paradigm was going on because this is 1685. Great Britain, and they were still on the Julian calendar. So on the Julian calendar, which was being used back in the days of Christ, if we roll it back and look, just the weekdays, not the dates, just the weekdays, it wasn't really on Monday, it was on Thursday. And so anyway, very cool. Anyway, I do a bunch of math in here, and it's like, geez, Dave, I hope you're better at math than you are holding a book up or a piece of paper. Well, I'm not. But what I did is I got involved, not just calculator, because, they make those, and Excel spreadsheets and so forth. But I found that regardless of how unreliable many people feel like AIs are in a lot of areas in giving you facts, and sometimes they are. You'll go into AI and you'll type things, and you'll ask it something like, well, what's a good way to do this with my car and fix this with my car, or to find this website and do this on a website? And the AI will come up with a really helpful suggestion and say, this is the way to do it. And you go in there and you go, that's insane. And you explain why, and they go, you're absolutely right. Here's a better way to do that. So sometimes AI will gaslight you a little bit, and it will give you some bad information. But where AI is really great is in the mathematics. So I asked about 4 different AIs. Let's see, Gemini, Gab AI, Grok, Copilot. I don't know. I asked several. I would cross-check the math, and I'd have sometimes I would have formulas generated and things like this. I wanted to look at Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy because it ties into the time when Messiah's cut off in Daniel 9:27, right? So how many years was that from, say, Nehemiah chapter 2? If we say, this is when the king gives Nehemiah word. Okay, you know what? Go ahead. Yeah, go do that thing with the city there that you want to do in Jerusalem because it's falling apart. Nehemiah, go ahead. A word was given. Nothing in Daniel 9:27 says anything about an edict. A lot of people like to go to a different date, like 558 or whatever like that, and look for an edict or something that somebody gave. No, it says in the prophecy in Daniel 9, when word's given to go ahead and rebuild the city and so forth. So I looked at 445, and I looked at the prophetic calendar or this administrative calendar. And it's difficult because those months are calendared lunar wise. Months are based on lunar. And the Hebrew calendar is lunisolar. So it's like how many trips does the earth make around the sun in how many days, and with the moon going around. So it's lunisolar. So it's, anyway, this book here, look at this book. What I did is I went through and I found things like asking AI, hey, I don't want to know how many months. I don't want you to count the number of solar days. Tell me new moons. How many moons from Nehemiah chapter 2, where it's the 20th year of Artaxerxes, how many moons happened between then and Nisan 14, which would have been another full moon, in all the way up into the times of Christ? And give me the years where it would have come out to this number here, because I want to know how many moons it was. So I want something that's divisible by 12, so I know how many years. And see what I mean? I don't want, I told the AIs, I don't want any of that. I don't want the solar calendar. I don't want the Gregorian calendar. I want to know how many full moons there were. So I did that kind of thing too. So I did a bunch of calculations like this, and this is it, folks. I'm telling you, and this is the receipts. We've got these newspapers that show the calendar that we have now versus the calendar at the time of Christ. The days of the week are 3 days off on every calendaring system that you'll look at online. They adjust for the dates. They correct the dates between Gregorian and Julian, but they do not correct the weekdays. The calendar people, when you ask them and you write them letters and things, I know because I did this, they'll tell you it doesn't matter because it didn't, after 1582. I'm not concerned about after 1582 and how it affects today. I'm talking about the look back. If you're using the Gregorian lens on the days of the week to look back at the Julian calendar, back to anything before 1582, but let's face it, the key time will be to look at certain days of the week for the time of Christ. 32 AD is the only year that the weekdays work with the Thursday crucifixion, which fits perfectly, and all the details are in the book. So anyway, I'm excited to have this. I'm excited I got this. I won it on an eBay auction, so that's what I wanted to show you. If you're interested in knowing more, take a look and see. There are some more newspaper type mastheads inside. And you can do this yourself by going on eBay and looking at anything. Now, see, if you're looking at old newspapers, the way the leap years used to work on the Julian calendar was every so many hundred years, they would do a leap year. So the year 1700 was one of those years where they do a leap year. Suddenly, if you get to the year 1700, you'll see a 4-day difference. See, the Gregorian calendar, what they have built into it with, February and all this other kind of stuff, and having a leap day and all this stuff, it corrects and it tracks in a more tightly compacted area cyclically. The Julian didn't used to do that, so the year 1700 was another year where they had to adjust the calendar if Julian kept going. It didn't. I mean, shortly after that, that's what probably got nudged the Protestant countries over the edge, and they said, all right, let's jump on the Gregorian train here, because now we're 4 days off. Day. That doesn't add a 4th day for this, because the Gregorian calendar was already in place and it didn't change. But so 1700, if you look at 1700 mastheads and newer, it would be a 4-day difference in the calendar. So Monday would really be Friday, kind of a thing. So you want to look at before the year 1700 at some of those old mastheads on the newspapers, and you'll see a 3-day difference in the weekdays. And I hope you enjoy it, but I'm kind of excited to have this all put together and have my own copy of my own receipt here, my own receipt. It's fun. It's fun, and it's good to finally have all of this settled, and the stuff that confused so many great minds for so many years, and to have that finally sorted out, finally figured out. I've asked many people to poke a hole in it. You're welcome to try. I've asked the AIs to poke a hole in it. At first, Grok fought me over it, because Grok isn't one of those yes men AIs, at least up to today, it's not, that tells you what you want to hear. Some of the AIs were like, yes, that's a great idea. Oh, stick your finger in the wall plug? Yeah, that's a great idea. Some of them will tell you, they'll gaslight you and tell you what you want to hear. Grok is designed to not do that. But anyway, I ran this through Grok, cross-check, copy this from Grok, put it over on Copilot and say, hey, this is information I got from Grok. Can you cross-check it with me? Or sometimes I wouldn't even tell it came from another AI. I would just say, hey, take a look at this, ingest this. You have to put it in a document first and say ingest this, otherwise it's too many words. And have the other AI like Copilot process it. And they all came around to agreeing that yes, you're absolutely correct, because the mathematics here and what they do in the calendar system is this type of an algorithm here. And yes, you're correct. It doesn't really account for the weekdays. It doesn't account for the days of the week. Instead of being like a yes man type of an AI, they'll try to help you with something like that. And they couldn't. Grok for a while fought me on it because they said, well, Encyclopedia Britannica says this, and Collier's, says this, and Wikipedia says this. I'm going, yes, but explain this. They tried to tell me that the calendars did not drift. And no. October 4th, that's always been Thursday. I go, really? So I pulled up screenshots of some of the online calendaring systems that showed that no, it was not on that date. Explain this. And I took the screenshot and put it in Grok. And Grok goes, hold on. And Grok calculated. Several minutes later, it says, you know what? This is really interesting. and it started figuring, and it started thinking and reasoning with me on the subject. And I started throwing all the things I found, and it started doing the calculations. And after a while, Grok was like, So now I heard back about Grok, and which is X's AI, Elon Musk. And they are considering the data and the calculations and the research as something to ingest into Grok to train its AI models, because they were impressed with some of the data that came out of that. Do that. Use the AIs if you want and if you must, or don't. And if you know how to manually put certain formulas and calculations into an Excel spreadsheet, do that. If you're really great with an abacus or a slide rule, do that. But meanwhile, this is available on Amazon, Proving 32 AD, by me, David Reynolds. I'm just kind of excited about that. I'm kind of cool because I'm a geek that way, and it's like, I won this in an auction. It's kind of cool. Anyway, and it corroborates with this. So strange, I know, but I get excited about weird things, and it's because I'm a nerd. So have a great day. More of biblical things coming up later. We're going to do more of, I'm motoring through Revelation. I'm about ready to close out the warnings to the 7 churches, which are really the 7 epistles of Jesus Christ, because by dictation, he's giving these letters to John, and he's telling John, write this down. To this church, write this down. So this is the closest we get to the writings of Jesus. So I'm enjoying going through the warnings to the churches. But then after the warnings to the churches in chapters 2 and 3, we go into chapter 4, and we end up with in the throne room with John, with that vision there. Was it a vision, or did the Lord time travel John? I don't know. Doesn't matter. God exists outside of time, so maybe it's the same thing. We'll find out when we get there. I'll enjoy getting in there. Unlike past series I've done in the past in Revelation, it's been like a home Bible study setting where we kind of like have an audience. We've got people there, and I'm teaching. This is more of this type of a thing here, and I'll try to provide graphics here and there where I can. And so I'm enjoying this. And it's kind of a different approach, and it's a shorter form, and try to keep it within about 30 minutes. So anyway, have a great day. Have a great rest of your week. Find a church this weekend. Go worship with the family.
PaDaddy.